Hello, everybody. Welcome to this LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram Live. I'll be speaking with Karolina Schmidt in this session, and she's an expert within child sleep. She's a child sleep consultant. I think it's a super interesting area because, first of all, I want to have children in the short term, I'd say very soon. And I know a lot of people have issues in terms of children's sleep. When I ask a group of adults what their biggest issue is with their own sleep, children is normally top, if not number two, because if children don't sleep well, they don't sleep well. Therefore, it's a massive topic, huge growing area. A lot more interest is going into this. So there's a lot of new science coming out, and I'm just very grateful to learn. So welcome, Karolina. Great to see you.
Hi, great to see you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
My pleasure. I'm here to learn today. So I guess it'd be good just to know, maybe for those who aren't so, I don't know much myself in terms of sleep training, children's sleep, like what is the basics of sleep training and what you do basically, and maybe there's some myths out there as well you want to handle.
Yeah, so I think the biggest myth of sleep training is when people think sleep training, they immediately think cry it out. Means they think it always relates to cry, to leaving your child in the bedroom alone to cry, because when they cry, they will fall asleep eventually. And believe it or not, years and years ago, people tend to do that. There was like not much basic knowledge about sleep. I still think there's like lots of parents are not, I mean, many parents are more and more conscious about it. That's why I've got so many clients, because people want to know more about it. So basically the sleep training, it's a term that covers lots of areas. If you want to like sleep train the child, sleep is not something that you can train. Sleep is natural state, right? So if you, from my experience, if you know a lot about sleep, like basic stuff, how children sleep, because they sleep a little bit different than grown-ups. If you have good sleep hygiene, then it's more likely you don't have to sleep train or put anything in place in order your child to sleep well, because everything will just go smoothly. What is normal in child sleep is the same as grown-ups. We wake up at night between the sleep cycles, and this is absolutely normal. But what people worry with children is that the kids wake up, and between the sleep cycle, they're able to stand up in the cot or cry. It's sort of like crying in sleep. And what we tend to do, we go to them, try to soothe them, but actually they're asleep. We don't really let them to link the cycles by themselves. And this is it creates sleep association. If they have sleep associations, that means they have something or someone from outside to help them to link the cycles. This is where they create sleep problems, because they cannot resettle themselves. They depend on someone or something. And the most common sleep associations are feeding to sleep, whatever it's a bottle or a breast milk. It can be a dummy pacifier, and that can be rocking to sleep, anything related. People tend to jump on the yoga ball as well, Pilates ball, to put the kids to sleep. So some people think sleep training is actually leaving your child in a room to cry. So the real cry it out is when you leave the child in the bedroom, you shut the door and you don't come in for the next 12 hours. Doesn't matter what's happening behind the doors, which is really, really brutal. No one does it now. I imagine maybe 50 years ago, our grandmas had to do it, or they were like, there was no basic knowledge about it. At the moment, you can sleep train in a very gentle way. You can just change the sleep associations. You can provide good sleep hygiene, good routine, and that probably will lead your child to sleep really well at night.
Interesting. And for anyone watching, we will be doing like Q&A maybe after 30 minutes. So if you do have questions, you can put it in the comments, be it on Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn. And I have plenty of questions myself in the meantime. I guess I'm talking about interested in the history of children's sleep. So obviously there's a lot of demand now. A lot of people struggling with their children and their sleep.
Yeah.
Has it always been this way? Is it always
So
the case that children struggle with sleep, or is it potentially a more modern thing that's
So
happening?
it's the same like with the psychologist. 50 years ago, not many people thought about the psychotherapy. Now almost everyone goes because we know it's good for us. And 50 years ago, I believe, so there's two things that you can look at. People used to live in the houses where there were like two generations. There were grandparents, they were like mom, dad, sometimes uncle and aunts, especially back in the country where I used to live. And the child had more time outdoors, so they were stimulated. The life cycle was a bit more like circadian rhythm, like how it's supposed to be. They were out in the morning, playing mostly outside, coming back indoors just for like lunch or dinner, and then everyone was going to sleep pretty early. There were no screens, obviously. So it was way better. But also, what I hear from stories from like even my family, I remember my uncle saying like, "Oh, my cousins never slept, and the only way they were falling asleep was rocking in the buggy, and the buggy had like this old like leather straps because they were like all-style buggies, and they were like, oh, we were just exchanging this leather straps every month because they were breaking from rocking." So I think there was always sleep problems in children, but people didn't really realize. They thought this is how it's supposed to be. If you got a young child, you don't sleep and they don't sleep because this is how it is. Now we know that we can actually help in many, many areas, and people are using services.
Building on that, I know a lot of people say, okay, like they say every kid's different. Some kids are good sleepers, bad sleepers, and I think the coach in us already knows these terms of you should never label, but people do. So, so let's say they had one child who just slept like this, and the other child was an absolute disaster.
Yeah,
is that normal? And what is normal?
That is possible. So what's normal? Normal are night wakings. It depends how we respond to the night wakings, because every child is different. Even if you have I have like loads of people who have twins, and the twins are totally different sometimes. One child has bigger sleep needs. The other one goes like just on on a spot when they say like normal sleep during the night, it's about 10.5 hours. This is where they're gonna go. 10.5 hours, or normal will be 13, according to the age, obviously. Let's say normal for the 14 months old is 13 hours of sleep within 24 hours. So that means 10.5 hours in the night and then 2.5 hours in a day, spread over one nap or two naps. And it depends, because some children can have like 3 naps a day when they like 8 months, but most of them will have 2 naps a day when they're 8 months. So it's really different. We've got something that's called wake windows, which is, you're probably familiar with this. Every age has different wake windows. Now, wake windows is the moment when the child wakes up until they go to bed again. And wake window can be between morning and nighttime when you've got child who has no naps. That can be also between, let's say, they wake up at 8 and they go to sleep at 9, which is like for 1 month old baby. So let's say wake window is 1 hour. This is not backed by science. This is something that people just understood while watching their own children, and they usually work. So basically, some children, I mean, most of the children, they need to have like a routine where they go to sleep even for half an hour every, let's say, 2.5 hours, regardless the age. And it's better for them than stretch the time and put them only for one nap, which is 2 hours long. So it's so different with every single child. And the family can have like, I'm the perfect example. My eldest son was the best sleeper. Like, I never had to do anything. Like, he could fall asleep feeding, but he slept through the night. He still is. But my youngest one had like a sleep association with feeding, that he was able to be awake like an hour every hour at night just because he wanted to have a feed. So they're brothers, same parents, and they're so different. So every child has like different sensory. You have to also look about on the like character of the child. If some of them they'll be more like they will wrestle more, some of them they will be just calm and do whatever you tell them to do. So everything is normal basically. Well, what's not normal is to wake up every hour and a half at night. This is where you've got a problem.
Interesting.
Because
Okay.
child doesn't sleep, you don't sleep, no one sleep, everyone's exhausted.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people could probably relate to that or being in that situation. And I guess that would be the majority of people who would reach out for help in this regard.
Yeah.
So that I'm guessing you've had many examples of children who are waking up every hour and a half, crying, constantly keeping the adults awake and themselves, and you end up in a situation where everyone's
waking whole neighborhood.
Yeah. So, in simple terms, what happens with these situations? Like, what were you able to? What were the changes that happened once you kind of did the work with the family on this?
So basically what I need to see first, I send the family the questionnaire, which is about 30 questions. And it's not only a question about like name and routine, it's a question about how was the labor, how was the pregnancy? Because if, for example, mom suffers for anemia, then we might think the child also might have low iron levels, and low iron and ferritin levels will lead you to really bad sleep. So I need to know about the routine, about the wake windows. I need to know like at least 2 weeks sleep diary. That means, so when I look on the diary, I see how often child goes to sleep, and I can kind of work out, because if child wakes up at night because he has sleep association, or he is overtired, or he's undertired, like this. Yeah, many different things that I have to look at. And this is then we have consultation, which is about hour and a half. We talk about everything. We talk also about like illness in the family. I often ask parents how was their sleep, because if, for example, one of the parents suffered for the night terrors when they were a child, it's more likely the child will have it too.
Interesting. So it's not simple is the answer, I guess, but
no.
I mean, if it was simple, everyone would have easy sleeping children, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I mean, to be fair, most of the sleep problems are because of the behavioral insomnia, which is sleep association. First thing I look at is also like if there's any medical issues, if there's any, because for example, children who are very restless sleeper, they tend to have lots of eczema that wakes them, or they're too hot, they overheated, or rarely too cold. Mostly the children are overheated because they kicked off the duvets in the night, and they just like they cold. The parents think they're cold, so they put extra layers on them, and they actually overheated.
Interesting. Now it's super similar to. I mean, it makes sense to me now, and so it's very similar to the work that I do with people, because it's a case of stop doing random stuff. Let's figure out what's the reality, what the potential causes, and then once we break these things down, we can make action steps.
Sometimes it's just the basic, like simple sleep environment. People don't realize that, for example, some people just leave the little light on, and I'm like, no, the child needs total darkness or light that is like either pinkish, either orange light, because it doesn't affect the melatonin. And sometimes the most funny thing is when they've got like baby monitors, and the baby monitor has a little light. And this is so disturbing for the kids' sleep. I don't know why people do that. Like the producer, why something like this on the market.
It's funny you say this, because this is one of my issues with hotels, that nearly every hotel I stay in.
You put the plaster over the.
Yeah. I've been given advice that people who struggle with this bring blue tack with them, and they put blue
Yeah,
tack over all the
yeah,
LEDs in the hotel. But I guess you could do the same with the baby monitor, right?
yeah.
But
That's what I
it
say
is,
to do.
yeah, it's just there's a lot of poor design related to sleep in the world
Yeah,
because
people. But I tell you,
it's forgotten.
yeah, but people worry that if the child will go to sleep in total darkness, like especially for the naps, that they
Hmm.
will think it's a nighttime. So what I had to do, I had to educate and explain people that your circadian rhythm is in a good place, so the child won't mistake the nap with the nighttime sleep, because the circadian rhythm is not developed until they like 8, maybe 12 weeks old when they're born. Yeah, it's developing. It's developing. And as you sometimes show on the Instagram when I follow you, I look on your story and you say like, oh, this is the best time, this is the best start of the day when you go outside and you expose yourself on the sunlight. So this is what I say to the parents: take your child for a walk, even it's a 5-10 minutes. That's enough for their body to recognize it's morning. It's easier with the children who are breastfed, because when we feed our children, when women feed children, our milk
Hmm.
contains melatonin levels as well. So it's supposed to be low in the morning,
Hmm.
and yes, and higher in the evening. And also the moms who are, it's a tip, the moms who are expressing milk, they don't breastfeed, but they do bottle feed with their own milk. It's good to write the hour, because different time of the day will have different melatonin level, and that helps your
Wow,
child to regulate the circadian rhythm.
that's amazing. I would have never even considered that. So
Yeah.
it's possible that some mothers, their children's just could be having sleep issues just because they're feeding them the breast milk from the morning in the
It
evening, and
could,
it's
yeah, it could.
yeah,
It's just one of these little things, because some children will be more sensitive to this, some children will not be sensitive to that.
yeah.
But it's like if you put lots of puzzles together, it will create great sleep picture. So that's what I say. So what you can do from the like basically beginning for your child is to sleep in for the night, from the evening through the night in total darkness, and during the day until they 8, maybe 10, 12 weeks, the naps can be like outdoors, or they can be in like a daylight in the crib, and it doesn't have to be totally dark. But after 12 weeks, so it's like approaching third month, the child becomes more alert. So any light will probably be too like asking them to play. Sorry. um it will be too stimulating. So they will think like, oh, it's the light, I don't think I need to sleep, because they're more alert and they developing, so they want to know more and they expect parents to be around. But if
Hmm.
you have the same routine before nighttime and before daytime sleep, for example, you go to the bedroom, you change their nappy, you say night night to them, put them, shut the lights, and put them to bed, they will recognize it as a sleep time. But then, obviously, if it's a nap time, they will more likely wake up after 30, 45 minutes, or you're going to have to wake them up after an hour and a half.
Interesting. Interesting. Damn, I'm already learning a lot. I think hopefully when the time comes for me,
Yeah,
fingers crossed, it's already like basic things I need to have understanding of, and then how to action.
yeah,
And I'm sure as all parents, we all make mistakes, but at least
yeah, we all
understanding
do.
what the mistakes might be is really
Yeah,
helpful.
but what we also need to know about the children's sleep when they are born, until like about 4 months, their sleep cycle is a bit different than ours. So they spend their sleep cycle in active sleep and then in a deep sleep. So it's kind of reverse that we've got now. And active sleep means that they wriggle in a sleep. They open their eyes, they close their eyes, they sometimes make sounds, and people think like, oh, he
Mhm.
is falling asleep, but he's actually asleep. And then they just go like very quiet, and they have their deep sleep. And when they hit about 4 months old, this is where there's a very famous term called sleep regression, which I think personally is not a regression, it's a progression. So basically, this is where the sleep cycle is maturing, so it becomes a bit more like an adult. So if they have active sleep and deep sleep, it has to swap places, kind of. So we often see it as very, very bad period, because imagine hormonal change in your body. In a little body, it will really, really sometimes affect them. They will be having like micro naps, power naps only, or for 2 weeks they will have really bad nights at sleep, because parents often say like, oh my god, my child was such a good sleeper until he was 3 months old and then completely gone. So what happens, we help them to sleep, because if they don't sleep they will be miserable. So we help them to sleep. We do contact naps, which is perfectly normal. We do we feed to sleep, rock to sleep, and then after this period, when it's like getting better and better, we just continue doing this. So we just leave the sleep association, because we are afraid something's gonna happen or it's gonna get worse. But what we actually need to do is to try things when, like, to teach your child to fall asleep in a different way than in your arms. I mean, there's nothing wrong with child falling asleep in your arms. It's really nice. But this is the strongest sleep association. And if you want your child to be able to fall asleep in every condition, like buggy, fall asleep in the cot, it's very useful. Then you can just practice new things. It's like a skill. It's nothing that it's not something that you won't survive without. But falling asleep independent.
Oh, I hope I haven't lost Karolina. Oh, there we go. I lost you for 2-3 seconds. So
yeah,
you just finish your sentence. Sorry.
This is very useful skill when the child goes for like a sleepover to grandparents, because you're not stressing that someone can't put your child to sleep, because you know they will fall asleep eventually, because they've learned all the sleep kisses, and it's much better. It's less stressful for you. It's less stressful for your child as well.
Interesting. So it's work, but it's definitely the return on investment on that work is
exactly
high.
Yeah. Well, also not every child will, have sleep problems falling asleep in your arms, but it's worth practicing.
I'm going to put a question up now, just because it was asked maybe 10 minutes ago, and I'm not sure if everyone can have the full time to be in the stream. So I'll put this up now from Claudia. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but if not, if it does.
Sleeping with parents or the child sleeping in a separate room has an influence of the quality of kids' sleep. So yes, that's a very common question. So some children sleep really well with the parents in the room when you co-sleep. It depends on the parent as well, because like for me, I can't sleep with the child in one bed, because the kids are very noisy sleepers. They just wrestling and they wriggle a lot. They kick you in the face. Some children will sleep better with the parents, but most of them, if they sleep in their room, in their own space, it's much better, because you don't wake each other up. Because night wakings are normal, as I said, and for the grown-ups, it's represented by changing the position, by sometimes you snore, or you don't even know that you're checking your phone, and you put it back down. Obviously, if you have your phone in your bedroom, which is very naughty, I know. But that will wake up the child, especially in the early morning hours, because the duvet will make a noise, and when it makes noise, the child will think oh, it's probably daytime, because they don't know what the time is. They will hear the parents, action, we wake up.
Interesting. So I guess it's some dependence. It can depend on the child, but
on the age as well. It's on the age as well. So co-sleeping also with the newborns, It's not really recommended. It's great if they can sleep in the cot, like it's called next to me cot, I think, when there's like mattress and the child sleeps in their own space, but it's attached to your bed. So because it's very dangerous, like we got seeds, the infant death syndrome, the sudden infant death syndrome that can happen just like this. So the sudden infant death syndrome is, nobody knows why it happens, but the research showed that 80% of the children who died were having not safe sleep conditions. So, for example, you can't co-sleep. It's not recommended to co-sleep with your child if you are obese, if you smoke, if you drink alcohol or do drugs, or even if you take the medicines that makes you drowsy. That's not recommended, because what happens, the child, I mean, also the mattress has to be firm, flat, firm mattress. The child cannot have their own duvet. They're supposed to be in a sleep sack. We're talking about children, about children under one, because the duvet often creates like an air pocket if they go next to their faces, and they just rebreathe the oxygen, and it's dangerous. They can suffocate.
Okay, very interesting. So a difficult topic, but I think one that has
it
to be
is
covered.
difficult, but I recently just finished the training about safe sleep, so I'm keen of educating.
It's important. So appreciate Claudia for the question. I hope that helps. We'll take more questions later. So we've covered quite a bit in terms of like babies, like under 1 year old. Do you ever get called in for advice around maybe older, like toddlers, or maybe even teenagers, or maybe just get asked this in life anyway?
It's rare. It's quite rare that parents of the teenager ask me for help, but most of the teenagers, it's more to do about an anxiety. I can give some advice, but it's more likely if they have big sleep problems, it's more likely that I would recommend them to go to kids psychologist, because it depends. Sometimes the teenagers has this syndrome where, we've got social media, and they just delay going to sleep because they're afraid. I think it's called FOMO, FOMO. It's like when they're is it when they're like afraid there's a life behind in social media, and when they go to sleep they'll just lose something. With the teenagers, it's also hormonal, that they tend to go to sleep late, but they will sleep longer during in a day, in the morning. This is like teenage thing. Mostly I get calls from parents whose children are about 3-4 months old, between 3 and 1, because people are more conscious and they want to help. They want to have like good sleep settings from the beginning, which is like so good for them and for their children. But I do get toddlers as well. With the toddlers, you have to be quite just consistent and firm in your decisions, because they would love to chat to you. They will try to make their own things. There's a term called terrible twos, when they like 2 and they like really sometimes angry, hard to manage. But people don't realize that when they 2, they get this, they don't want to go to sleep because they want to play, but they're tired, and you have to put them to sleep. And people think like, oh, maybe they should drop a nap, they will sleep better at night. This is not true. What you have to do is just show them like, this is the time to sleep, because if they get solid sleep at night and they get like solid nap during the day, there will be almost no terrible twos. Their behavior will be much better. Obviously, they will still have some tantrums because it's normal in the age. However, good sleep and good routine puts their brain in a mode that they feel safe. If they have routine, they feel safe, they feel secure, because brain doesn't have to think of what's going to happen next, because the brain knows. And it's amazing how it works with the toddlers. What you have to do is you really have to be consistent and firm and say like, bedtime is not negotiable. We don't negotiate bedtime. You can have 2 books and just limit the choices. You have this pajama, you have 2 books, you don't have any more books, that's it. Because they will go like, oh, can I have another one, and another one? And the parents go like, oh, yes, you can, of course you can. And the bedtime just being pushed and pushed and pushed, and this is just not good for their sleep.
It's funny, it's very similar for adults and days. And but there's an interesting research done by, I'm going to massacre his name, I forgot the scientist who did it, but basically I think it's a massive meta-analysis of many studies, and it's talk about blue light, video games, social media, and long story short, the biggest problem wasn't any specific technology. The problem was that people were going to bed late.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
That was a fundamental problem. And so what doesn't matter what it is, if we go to bed later than we should be, and it just keeps happening and happening and happening, we end up in a net negative. It's a spiral.
But there's a big myth also about children. Like some people go like, oh, I'm not gonna put it to bed at 7 p.m. I'm gonna try 7:30, 7:45 p.m. and surely it will sleep longer. No, that's not happening. You really have to work with the wake windows, because if you put child to sleep that is overtired, too tired, then you get like mix of cortisol and adrenaline, and they will try to keep your body alert, awake. And most of the children who are very early risers are overtired. Even if they go to bed like 7 p.m., they have nap during the day, they don't get enough sleep during the night. And for the nap time, because people often go like, oh, he's 1, he's not supposed to have 2 naps, he's supposed to have 1 nap. And they reduce the nap, and they're getting like trying to short the nap. It's actually not working because the body builds up the cortisol.
Interesting.
But it's the same with the grown-ups, isn't it?
It is, yeah. There's some people who are like, oh man, I got no sleep issues, I fall asleep straight away, and I'm like, it's not a good thing. It means you're too tired.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the same with children. Some people and children will naturally go to sleep like this, and it doesn't mean they're overtired. But most of the time, most of the children, if they fall asleep within like a minute or 2, that means they're too tired. The good thing is I don't see many like super overtired children. I think it's the overtiredness. It's like it's a term that is a bit overused as well. But what I do see, I see very tired children and more tired parents.
I'm sure a lot can relate to that. So I appreciate it's a deep subject. There's not like one rule fits all.
No.
Let's say if there is parents who their child struggles to get to sleep, is there any, let's say, basic advice you would give them, like maybe 1 or 2 things that they could action after this?
I would say review the day, review your routine, have a look on wake windows, age appropriate, and also have a look on your sleep hygiene. Because if it's like full of screens, often what I see with the bigger children, people have dinner, they have bath, and they have TV time, like half an hour. But obviously blue light is not good for you, and it depends also what the children are watching, because some children will get like really hyper from Paw Patrol, let's say. I've seen children getting really hyper after this, and some children will just be calm and they will have no issues. But I would say review the routine and have a look on your sleep hygiene, especially the evening, the rituals, what you do before sleep.
Yeah.
Make it calm, not late.
And for parents who have children who, let's say, are struggling to stay asleep, they're waking up many times, and I appreciate some of that's going to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
What would be some things that they could look into? So
have a look what your child needs to go back to sleep. If they only settle with the one thing, that means they have sleep association, and to change that, you have to change this sleep association. So basically, how they go to sleep at night or for the naps, if they rock to sleep and you put them down and they sleep 2-3 hours, 3-4 hours, and then they start waking, and only rocking to sleep helps them to go back to sleep, to link the sleep cycle, this is what you have to change, because they wake up and they cannot resettle themselves. They expect you to do something. So this is what you have to look at and change the way they fall asleep. And again, I will say falling asleep independently, it's not something that you need for life, but it's a very useful skill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I imagine if someone has good sleep as a child, they're much more likely to have good sleep as an adult as well. I mean, it's a very long-term factor. I don't know the science on this, but it would just intuitively make sense.
Well, for sure, it helps if you have a good sleep as a child. For sure, it helps you to develop your brain, because there's so many things. Also, when kids are asleep, they do lots of work. So basically, the new connections in the brain are made when they are asleep. And even if they have, let's say, 3 naps, 30 minutes each, they're not meant to really have like proper rest. They're meant to have build new connections in the brain. They develop constantly. That's why it's so important to have a good sleep when you are a child, especially when you are a child.
A bit of a slightly off topic, but a question I just have in mind. So I saw something about Coco Melon recently, the big YouTube channel that children watch. It's like
I heard about it. It's so stimulating.
Yeah, I heard it just turns children into absolute zombies. But I guess the question around this is, I mean, screens, technology, social media, they're here to stay, right? They're here to stay. And I know a lot of parents will have a little iPad or something for their child, play games, or they watch children's TV and things like this. Do you think there's a happy balance? And are there any, I know, like children's TV or things that you think is actually good and things that maybe they should avoid? So Coco Melon, I think generally everyone's like, just don't.
Coco Melon, everyone knows. Like when you say Coco Melon, I can immediately hear the tune in my head. So imagine how it impacts kids' brain. Even like my kids never watched Coco Melon. They did watch different things, but even there's no good or bad. I would say if you have to put screens on for children, try to do it in the first part of the day a little bit. Avoid the evenings. Evenings, just go outside or do like a physical activity, sensory. Look for like a sensory, calming massage, or for children, obviously, or sensory play, which is like jumping, rocking them, because they have to have like good stimulation to fall asleep as well. They have to be tired enough, not overtired, but their body has to be tired enough. But I give you the example of like my son who was watching. You know how people probably mostly from America, they have these YouTube channels when they test toys, and they do like he was obsessed with the trains, Thomas, and they were doing racing, and he even thought like he had limits on it, like half an hour a day. He was sometimes waking up at night or waking up early in the morning saying like, oh, I need to have a look on this Thomas, I need to do the trains. And he was like, his body was so alert that I thought like, oh my goodness, this is not even a cartoon, this is something like people do. And you think like, oh, that's just toys, but it actually has massive impact on children's sleep. They will often, because when children are often like when they're older, I know the parents who are like, oh, he's waking up at 5 a.m. all the time. I'm like, okay, what do you do at 5 a.m.? Do you start the day? And they were like, oh, I'll be honest, I'll just put a TV on for them. I'm like, well, this is why they wake up, because they wake up, they see the sunlight, they go downstairs and they put TV, and it's just addictive.
Yeah, it's kind of the reward mechanisms in our brain.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, as an adult, I struggle with this. I struggle with dopamine. And I think it's probably one of the biggest problems in society that's kind of a low-key problem, but I think a big one where we're losing our time and our energy and our focus because we're getting these little dopamine rewards from TV, screen.
social media.
I try and make content, and if I make content that gives people dopamine, I'm going to get more views. But
I'm so happy. I know. I'm so excited with the content making too.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So I imagine the issues that we have as adults is just on the next level for children, because at least we have some ability to be like, I think I've been on Instagram enough today. I'm
with the children, you have to stop them.
They have no context what normal should be. So it must be a huge challenge for all.
But another
parents.
thing is, like, most of the people, especially after COVID, most of the people work from home or been working from home in front of the screens, and the kids just look at you and they're like, you're in front of the screen, I'm going to be in front of the screen, because they see it as something natural, that's normal. When children do, I work also as a nanny, and on the settings, when children were pretending, doing role plays, how parents are working, they were like, oh, I have to do some work, and they were like taking toy computer, and this is the work that they've been doing. That was work for them in front of the screens. So it's just, regarding to your question, how life was different 50 years ago.
It's I mean, I talk about this a lot, and it's a case of we are living in a very unique period of time. Like the last 20 years are so much different to the last potentially 150,000 years, but certainly the last 2,000 years. And biologically we're the same. So it's like, how are we gonna, our body's not built for the world we live in, and therefore our brain
we get stimulation all the time. And also there's massive sleep problem in the cities, because big cities means lights. And we're just not used to it. Our body not supposed to be.
And it's part of the reason this whole sleep area is growing more and more, sadly, because I think the problem is only getting worse and better. But I think your work's obviously in a positive direction now. I'm sure it helped a lot of parents first of all get their sleep sorted out, but also it's fantastic for
so that's another thing. If you sort your child sleep, the child depends on you, obviously, then you sleep better. But what happens when the child sleeps better? Parents are often, they're so used to be awake at night, they wake up every hour checking on the child if he's okay. This is how your body is in stress, and you don't realize. It takes time to learn to sleep again.
Exactly, and I've had to go through this process myself, so I can really get it. I had another guest on many months ago, Karen Parker, who's like a influencer within nasal breathing, and I remember her saying something like there's a big debate. I don't know how big the debate is, but there's a talk about if a lot of the kids with ADHD, do they actually have ADHD or are they just sleep deprived?
Yes, exactly. That's another thing.
The very strong links between ADHD and sleep. So it's very much unproven that the science is out. But
and grown-ups with ADHD needs a bit different conditions to fall asleep, but this is probably like another topic to cover.
Yeah. So maybe for another time. So I'm just going to quickly check if there's any last-minute questions on Instagram. It's possible. Sometimes the streaming platform I have doesn't show all the questions. So if I've missed any questions, I will find them and I'll send them to you.
Right.
What's the best way that people can reach out to you, Karolina, if they would wish to either follow your content or maybe...
At the moment, so you can follow me on Instagram on sleep.puzzle. And if you want to reach, if you've got a question about anything or about private consultations, you just send me a DM, or you can send me an email on sleep.puzzle@hotmail.com. And that's probably the best way, because mostly my work and my clients, I work with them, I found them, they reach me through Instagram. This is where it all started.
Makes sense. Well, that's how I found you as well. So really grateful for this conversation. I think it really helps to maybe remove some of the mystery from children's sleep, because I imagine I mean, I'm thinking already, like, if I have a child who's not sleeping well, I'm going to start panicking about it. Well, I think you've helped to bring it in a better line where it's the case of, okay, don't panic. Just
Don't
look at
panic.
these
There's
things,
things you can do.
all these things.
Yeah.
Every child sleeps differently, and it can be helped. It's not like
the best thing you can do when you have a child is to have zero expectations regarding sleep. Zero expectations, but gain knowledge. And
I'm not expecting to sleep a great amount when.
That's what people think. Like, oh, I don't want. You see, as another myth, like, oh, I'm not gonna sleep. I have a child. Okay, you're not gonna sleep for a bit, but then you'll be fine. Believe me.
Yeah, you're right on that. As in, I'll correct myself. I'm expecting challenges, but it doesn't mean that, like, how to put it. I think a lot of parents say they can't sleep because they're child, but typically when I break things down, we realize there's a lot of wins there.
Exactly.
There's very few people who have bad sleep, bad sleep, and they're doing everything right. It's rare. So there's always ways we can improve.
That is true.
All right, so I'm going to end the stream. Very grateful, and we can hang around afterwards for a moment. So thank you for being tuned in, and we'll